So Helen, could you introduce yourself and give us an idea of what your business does, but very briefly, because obviously we're going to go into it in great depth afterwards.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having me on. First of all, Claire, really appreciate it. Been really looking forward to this. My name is Helen Hardy. I'm the founder of a business called Fowdies. We're the world's first and still only platform that represents women's football only. So we don't do anything to do with Premier League or the Men's World Cup or anything to do with men's football. We focus purely on both grassroots and elite level women's football. And I also am the founder of Manchester Laces and also the founder of a league called the Alternative Football League. And these are inclusive spaces for adult footballers, women, non-binary, transgender people who hopefully want to come and play either for the first time or come and play if they've been playing all of their lives, just to create that space that's fun and emphasis put on fun. So that's me, football obsessed.
So tell us about your childhood, Helen. Where did you grow up? How did you get into football?
I'm from, might be able to hear it a little bit in my accent. I'm from Newcastle upon Tyne. We are football mad in the northeast of England, and I'm a lifelong Newcastle United fan for my sins. I grew up probably about 2 miles from Newcastle United, from St James's Park, and I remember when I was a little girl, my dad had 3 girls. I was the youngest of 3, and I think he may be a little bit disappointed. and so I became the one that went to the football with him. And I remember I caught the bug when I went to my first ever game, which was Newcastle United versus Manchester United, and we won 5-0 because we were good back then. And I remember just being in the stands and just finding it absolutely incredible, the noise and the passion, and feeling really part of it. What was really funny though was growing up and kind of, I guess, learning more about myself, I started to feel more and more distant from football. I'd go to the football and I'd realize a lot more what was going on around me. I was definitely in the minority being a woman, and definitely in the minority being LGBTQ plus. And so as I grew up, I guess my relationship to football dwindled a little bit more. Being a woman in football in the 90s as well was really difficult. Accessibility was a huge issue for women and girls. And little did I know that down the road, some of the greatest footballers in women's football were being created, as it were, at Sunderland Academy. It was a hotbed for women's football in the 90s, but it was just so inaccessible. So yeah, I grew up in that area, and my passion for football stayed, but it dwindled over the years. And I left Newcastle when I was 18, moved to London, and I went to drama school. I went to Guildford School of Acting. It's one of the top musical theatre schools in the world, and I was super into musical theatre, believe it or not. And I wanted to be the next big musical theatre star. And I think that probably looking back, at the time, I maybe diminished or undervalued what it was to go to drama school or what it was to be an actor. But a lot of the skills that I learned at drama school, a lot of the skills that I learned in being an actor, of the resilience that it takes, but the confidence, public speaking, events like this have really put me in an amazing position to sort of carry me forward and launch my business. So yeah, that's kind of a little bit of my my teens and my early years.
And what's your coming out story? Were you out before you went to Guildford, or?
No, I think that for me, I was kind of, it was all very subconscious, and I'm sure a lot of people can relate to this. For me, it was really subconscious for most of my teens. I was, when I was at school, a lot of my friends would be dating guys, so that was just the thing that I did. I was really lucky in the sense that because I was going to drama classes and because I was kind of part of this really expressive community as well growing up, that I was experiencing the LGBTQ plus community, but as a gay woman, there was zero representation in my immediate world that I was seeing. So it was quite lonely. I think when I first realized, and I first sort of was feeling like it was something that was it was present to me was when I was at drama school in first year, and there was a lot of out guys. There was no one out, and that was a girl in my drama school, and the school was really small, so it wasn't like going to university. There was 30 people in our year, so there was 3 years. It was a BA course and then a master's, so you'd maybe in the school at any given time there was like 200 people, and there wasn't a single out woman at the school. Or in Guildford, it felt like. Or was in Surrey, for God's sake.
It's not the most banging gay scene, is it, Guildford?
It wasn't great. But I felt like I was really lucky. I grew up in a really kind of liberal family, and I knew in my heart of hearts that my parents would be incredibly supportive, that my 2 big sisters would be incredibly supportive. My sisters, my big sister in particular, and it's always, I feel like, the eldest sibling who I guess kind of rules the roost in lots of ways. And I knew that she was super politically driven, and she was always outspoken, long before many other people were in the noughties around things like equality, women's equality, LGBTQ plus rights. My sister was really at the forefront of a lot of that, and worked for the government, but also was kind of trying to legislate lots of change at the time. She's not out, and she's she's straight, but she was very much someone that I knew I could speak to about it. And she was kind of my go-to, I guess, in coming out. And I remember being sat with her, and it was like hours before my mum and dad's wedding anniversary, and everyone was coming over, and I just like couldn't bear to like not talk about it anymore. I'd been like holding it in for so long, and I just like sat down with Claire, and she was like, I know, obviously. Like it was the most casual, comfortable conversation. And then I never came out as such. I met a girl, and then my coming out was, I've got a partner, and my parents never made assumptions, and they were incredible. They were like, oh, what are they called? And luckily it wasn't a name that could be synonymous with men or women. It was very much a girl's name. And they were like, I'm so happy for you. We're so happy for you. And I was absolutely blessed, so lucky to be in a family that are so supportive. And I think from a business perspective, from a work perspective, it could have been life-changing. It could have been something that massively hindered me, but it actually was something that really empowered me, like knowing that I had a family around me that was so supportive. And I recognize both my privilege in that, but also I recognize how much that spurred me on and how much that empowered me to be myself.
So you've come out of Guildford with a degree in drama. Tell us about your career development after that.
I very quickly realized when I was probably in second year that I maybe was doing acting or being part of that world for the wrong reasons. I looked around the incredibly talented people around me, of which many of them now are still in the West End and still doing incredible work. And I realized that my motivations, the reasons that I was doing it weren't necessarily the right reasons, that I wasn't necessarily doing it for self-fulfillment, that I was doing it because it was something that I was good at, or I felt like I was confident. And I looked around me and I just thought, everyone around me here is better and more driven at this in this particular sphere. So it was very quick that I realized into going to drama school, I didn't want to be an actor. But as a person, I'm a starter finisher. So I was like, I'm going to get my degree and I'm going to do this 3 years and I'm going to learn from this. It also probably was the worst 3 years of my life. Looking back, I really didn't enjoy that world. There's been a lot of change that's happened at both Guildford School of Acting, but many drama schools around the country. They've come out around equality issues, around homophobia and the issues that surround that. I was typecast quite a lot. I felt really like I'd been sort of shuffled off into a bracket of being able to only play one type of role. It was a really difficult few years for me, but I was really resilient through it. And I feel like now I look back and it was probably one of the best experiences that I could have had. So coming out of drama school, I signed with an agent, and within a month I dropped my agent. I and I got an administrative job working at a car wash company. Careful.
Didn't see that one coming.
Yeah,
so how long were you there?
I was there for years, actually, because that was really my biggest area of growth in terms of experience. I never worked on an Excel spreadsheet. I didn't know how to do emails. All of my dissertation had been writing scripts and doing Shakespeare, so I knew nothing. So that was my learning. And I was there for 5 years, and through those years I went from administration to becoming a sales executive, to becoming the sales manager, and then eventually I was the regional manager, so I ran the north of England. So I moved out of Surrey, and I ran like 55 businesses working with Tesco. And so it was like a franchise operation, and I was in charge of looking after the businesses, helping them grow their businesses, exit their businesses, and working with strategy. I learned everything that I learned within that industry. But the thing that I learned the most was that it didn't require me to have multiple degrees. It didn't require me to have a background in accountancy or in marketing. What it required was like resilience and a willingness to learn, and a willingness to know that you didn't have to always be right. You didn't have to always know everything, and it was okay to not know. And that was something I always had, because my background had been drama. So I'd come into it going, I know nothing, by the way, just so you know, I know nothing. So everything, you're going to have to teach me everything, but I'm willing to learn. And it was a really quick development. So through those 5-6 years working for that company, I learned everything that I learned in terms of marketing and sales, and all the things that I think are probably my strong points as a business owner. And then I got a message from a company called Stagecoach Performing Arts. They're the biggest performing arts school in the world for young people. And they contacted me to run their north of England region. And they knew my background in being at Guildford. I'd been recommended, and I'd obviously run big businesses, and I moved over there. And then within those couple of years, and I'm sure this is how so many people's business stories started, this thing happened called COVID, and everything stopped. And I was working for a performing arts company, so of course we couldn't have any of the schools running. The entire business basically was shut down overnight. They tried to take a lot of the sessions online, but I was immediately put onto furlough. And it was in that period, being on furlough, that I kind of really took a look at myself, and I really assessed what fulfillment meant to me, and what I see as sort of self-fulfillment, or the thing that I felt was really my driver. And that really led back to what had been kind of underlying in terms of my entire career, which had been my hobby. It'd been the thing that I'd done on the side. I'd done podcasts, which was women's football. I absolutely loved women's football. I was driven by women's football. I was driven by not only the 90 minutes and the football game itself, but by the growth of the game, by the equality aspects, by the representation for me as a gay woman. I felt so strongly aligned and affiliated to the women's game, and I felt such a connection to it that it was what spurred me on. And during the first 3 to 4 weeks of being on furlough, I worked with a charity to market and raise money for the pandemic, for COVID relief, and for local support networks. So what we did was we got signed women's jerseys, Lucy Bronze, Megan Rapinoe, and we did like a raffle. And so we raised £22,000 in just over a week for the COVID relief funds. And that was like the best entry point to me, being like, I am so fulfilled right now. I'm absolutely loving this.
I think what's amazing about successful people's stories is, I don't know, there's this illusion that your career sort of goes like this, and it's quite linear, and it's forwards and upwards. And actually, I find that really people have bad experiences like you had at university. They get jobs, but then they get furloughed or what have you, and there are ups and downs, but redundancies and things like that. and that every time it sort of contributes to the upward, but you have to do the downward at the same time to do the
I
upward.
think that's
Anyway,
also, that's been my perspective as well on life, because every single dip that I've had in my career or in my life has genuinely contributed more heavily, I would say, to my success than the positive things. So like, I obviously don't want to skip forward, but signing with Nike was probably one of the greatest moments of my career, but it's not contributed to who I am as a person. It's just enhanced my life. It's been amazing. I'm so grateful. But what contributed to my life was the resilience to go back into drama school every single day, despite hating it, despite not being particularly liked by many of the teachers, despite a lot of underlying homophobia, to go back every day and get my degree, and power through. That's probably one of my proudest achievements, but also one of the things that's made me so resilient to, oh, there's a pandemic. Okay, I'm gonna have to pivot now. I'm gonna have to change what I'm doing. I know I can, because I've done it before and I'll do it again. And that's what being an entrepreneur is pivoting all the time. And, you know, like minor details, but things like we were in last night until after 9 o'clock, me and the ops director of Fowdy's, because they decided to drop the World Cup kits at like 9 p.m. So it's like, got to get in. Like Adidas have dropped the kits, we've got to go. Like, it's just, you've got to pivot, you've got to move, you've got to be resilient, and you've got to just you've got to just be like willing to take the lows with the highs.
Yeah. So let's go back. You're on furlough, you're raising money for charity. How is your business going to spring out of this situation?
I'd already been in this place in my head about Fowdy's, or the idea of it. And Fowdy's, by the way, is I guess now in hindsight, we're actually dropping it this afternoon, this partnership, so I can kind of talk about it. But I named a business after a woman called Julie Fowdy. And now in hindsight, it's a bit creepy because she's actually an ambassador of the company. But she was like my idol. She was the midfielder for the US women's national team 99ers. And back then, there was a legislation change in America, which meant that they had to give equal access to women as to men on scholarship schemes at university. It was called the Title IX project. And that US women's national team were a real beneficiary of that project, of that government change. And the US women's national team, as most of you will know, became world dominant in women's soccer. And Julie Fowdy was like the talisman of change. She was like the leader at the forefront, but she also is hilarious. Like, she's just a massive character. And now she owns a football club in America. And I'd had this idea in the back of my mind, and her name kept on cropping up as like she'd been the real game changer of the women's game, and she'd been a big part of that growth period back in the 90s. And I'd been at the World Cup in 2019, the year before COVID, or months before COVID, in France. And I was in the stands watching the Lionesses, and I was looking around and I was like, where's the representation for fans of the merchandise, of the clothes that the players are wearing on the pitch? We just had these kits made for us, and none of the players, none of the fans in the stand were wearing these kits. They were all wearing the men's kits. They were wearing Beckham shirts, and they're wearing USA shirts without the stars above the crest. And I was borderline frustrated, mainly with the fans, because thinking, why are you not wearing them? But having talked to fans, it was an accessibility issue. It was the fact that you'll go onto these sports websites, even today, even right now, despite the power the women's game has now, and you'll see men, you'll see Mo Salah, you'll see all of the superstar men's players on the homepage. And I was like, there should be a platform where women are highlighted, where women are spotlighted, where players and fans can go and they feel like they're front and center. They're the most important people right here, right now. And it was an idea. I just thought of it in the stands, watching the Norway game, and that England ended up winning 3-0. And I remember just thinking, yeah, that would be wicked, like to have that representation. And I planted it in my mind, and I just went on with my life, really. I was working at Stagecoach. I was quite happy. I was in a place where I think I was stable. I had a nice car, I had a nice job, and I had my own house. So I was like, everything was really stable. My partner and I at the time were just really comfortable. COVID shook everything. It changed everything. It changed my mindset. It changed my fulfillment goals. It made me realize that being stable and like ordinary just wasn't the path that I really saw myself being on. And I wanted to do something I wanted to create a legacy. I wanted to create change. And I didn't feel like I could do that in the position that I was in. And that was where it kind of re-sparked that idea. And so it was during that period that I launched Fowdies. Initially just in my bedroom. I bought a heat press machine so I print the WSL lettering. So obviously I don't know how many of you can see behind me, but I would print the lettering onto the back of the shirts using basically a big iron. And I would do it at home on my own. And initially when I launched the business, I was the only person in the world printing WSL shirts. So you'd have Chelsea fans, Man United fans, they would literally be like on my rubbish little website, which at the time it was, that I'd made myself. I never built a website. I didn't know what I was doing. And then they would be messaging me, be like, thank God someone's done this. Like, I've always wanted Ella Toon shirt. I've always wanted a Chloe Kelly shirt, but no one does it. The club don't do it, and Sports Direct don't do it. No one's doing this. And
you're getting women's shaped shirts and then printing them? Or
no, I was getting men's shaped shirts, women's shaped shirts, but the lettering, the name sets and the numbers are totally different for the women's game to the men's game. They're totally different fonts, they're different patches that go on the sleeve. People were buying shirts that were for women's football, so a Viv Miedemar Arsenal shirt, and it was arriving with a Premier League sleeve patch. So it wasn't representing the women's game. It was a women's name on a men's shirt, essentially. So I was saying, I feel like to have that representation, to hold space in football, we need to be able to access this font. So the struggle, I mean, talking about the little struggles, and there's constant little struggles, every day is a little struggle, but the struggle to get access to the font, to get the rights to use the WSL font, finding the company that owned the rights to it, first of all, was a struggle. Like, getting the rights was a struggle. Little old me in my bedroom trying to get the rights to sell WSL lettering and FA affiliated league font was really difficult. I'm not gonna lie, I did have to make up that I was like in some sort of factory. I was in my bedroom. But yeah, I thought, you know what, I'm gonna go for this. And when I started doing it, I laid down, I think it was £3,000 that it cost me to buy the initial set of lettering. I bought a secondhand heat press machine from eBay for £130. I saw a really good deal. I was chuffed with that. And then I just set it up in the corner of my bedroom and I was printing WSL shirts. And within weeks, just from like putting it on my Twitter, creating my own Twitter page for Fowdies and just sharing it to my immediate network, I was like, I'm going to have to leave my job, or I'm going to have to not do this anymore, because I physically wasn't able to print the shirts and do my job. I knew that if I went back after furlough, I wouldn't be able to do my job and run this small business. So
how many were you getting through in a day, and was the demand there right from the beginning?
From the beginning, yeah. I think, and in the beginning, realistically, I was probably doing like 10 shirts a day at like 30-40 pounds a shirt. But that 10 shirts a day, it was like a labor of love. It's like a piece of artwork. I know I'm a football shirt lover, so I'm gonna say this, people will be sitting there going, what is wrong with this woman? But I like the detail that goes into it. Each shirt was a labor of love. You would lay the shirt under the heat press machine, you would lay out the letters to create the names, to create the nameplate. But somebody's spending, you know, hundreds of pounds on this item. It has to be right, it had to be perfect. And so as I've grown, obviously I've become an expert in doing that and passing on my knowledge to our team that now print, and then the fulfillment center that now do the printing for us. But in that initial period, you know, it was probably £200-300 a day from my bedroom. And I was thinking, I was putting in, you know, half an hour, 40 minutes into each print. And then I was doing posts about each of the prints that I'd done on my Twitter page. Go back to the beginning, it was like my shaky mobile phone taking a photo of the shirt I'd just done. And then, yeah, I just started to notice the organic growth. And actually, something I'm incredibly proud of is, until investment, which landed, so if you're thinking now we're just over 2 years in, 2.5 years in, until investment, which landed in January 2023, so 4 months ago, I didn't spend a penny on marketing. I grew my business to a 6-figure business organically. So it was on pure word of mouth. and we were just doing it based on the incredible customer experience that we were giving to people. And just every shirt, like, precious to me. If we were printing a shirt, it was like, it was so important to me. And in the beginning, I knew, and I was savvy to it because of my marketing background, and I helped businesses grow, and I understood the basics of running and growing a business, that my actual the actual building blocks of my business in the first year were making me a loss, because I didn't have the rights to sell Nike products or Adidas products or Puma products. And like, I was going to be able to walk into the biggest brand in the world and say, hey, can I buy shirts from you at wholesale price, please? I knew that it was, well, I tried, I emailed them, they didn't reply. But I knew that I was going to have to prove the model worked. I was going to have to evidence something that the whole world was telling us wasn't commercially viable, which was women's football. I was going to have to evidence women's football is commercially viable. I've been to the World Cup. I've been to the European Championships. I go to the WSL. I'm seeing the fans, but we're not representing them. And so I was buying physically from the shelf the Nike Chelsea shirt, and then I was printing onto the back of it. So I was making zero money. I was making a turnover, but I was making no profit. Because the only profit I was making was the lettering. The shirt I was buying for £70 and I was selling it for £70. So proving the model for over a year and working in a pub on night shifts, and then going back in to print shirts at £0 profit, it took its toll. It was really challenging because nobody believed me. Like, I was at the time, maybe I was turning over, 10-12 grand a month at £0 profit, knowing that I could be making a 50-60% profit if Nike or Adidas would give me an agreement. But it was such a challenging period, because I was like, I can't do this forever. Like, it's at some point I'm either gonna have to give up, or one of the brands is gonna have to recognize that I'm here, and that I need this wholesaler agreement in order to be able to actually grow and develop this business. And then the Euros happened in 2022, and I mean, I kind of knew this was going to happen. I kind of saw this coming. I knew that it would be a game changer. I knew that a home tournament on an English soil, where our national sport is football, I knew that it would change the game for women. I knew that it would change the game for equality. And I also knew that it would have a massive impact on LGBTQ plus equality in football. And that was something that I was so excited about. And sure enough, it did. And I'd been kind of managing to chip away at like a junior Nike person, and then a slightly more senior Nike person. Then, can I speak to your boss? And then, would you mind if I had 20 minutes with your boss? And eventually, about 3 weeks before the Euros launched, and we were really in full swing on our sort of, what I was seeing was like Pepsi campaigns and Doritos campaigns, and I was seeing billboards going up with Leah Williamson front and center. And that was when I got on a call with a woman called Lizelotte Bierhoff. And in fact, behind me, she sent me a note after our call on Nike letterhead, just saying, with a small gift from the World Cup in 2019 that she had lying in her office. And I framed it and I put it behind me because it was the most pivotal moment for my career. Because to that point, I was buying shirts at 70 quid and I was selling them at 70 quid. And Lizelotte was the head of women's sport. And I remember our call, she said, she's Dutch, very to the point. And she came on the call, said, you've got 20 minutes because I've got a call with Serena after this. And I thought, Serena Wiegman? I went, Serena Wiegman, the England manager. She goes, no, Serena Williams. I was like, oh, my bad. So I had 20 minutes with Lizelotte, and I just shared with her, like, women don't have equal access points in sport. Women don't have equal access points in football in particular. And we're about to enter one of the biggest tournaments. And I just want you to go on the Sports Direct website right now. I just want you to go on the Pro Direct website, go on the Kitbag website, go on any of the sports retailer websites. Are we being represented as women's football fans? Like, can you easily buy those products? Or are we still seeing Liverpool shirts, Man United shirts, and Premier League stuff? And she did everything in her power, and she got me in front of the partnerships team. So during the Euros, I was covering the WSL for the BBC, covering the Euros for the BBC and building my business. And then I was having these sort of conversations with Nike that were ongoing. And by the end of the Euros, it was like the best week of my life because England won the Euros. Me and my whole family were at Wembley. And then a few days later, Nike said, we're going to set up a partnership with you. And we're not just going to do that. We're going to back you all the way. And I'm one of 23 partners of Nike in Europe. And I can bet that you'd be able to name the 22 others. So, you know, we're talking the major brands in JD Sports, Sports Direct, major brands. And of course,
this partnership give you? It just gave you access to be able to print onto the shirt so that you could get the shirts at a discounted price from 70 quid or?
So yeah, it gives us access to all of the Nike lifestyle brands and football boots and shirts, but at the price that you'd buy it in the warehouse from. So we're buying it directly from their factories in Singapore and China, but the official products at the wholesale price. So essentially less than half of what you'll see on the shelf. Just means now, and I know that sounds crazy to anyone in layman's terms, but in terms of e-commerce, you just can't survive without having a 50% margin. So that was the game changer. But beyond that, ever since that, I mean, like Nike I've been to their Amsterdam European head office to meet with their senior people. But the most amazing moment for me, and I shouldn't be saying this as a business owner, but they invited me to Portland, which is their world headquarters, and I'm on the board for the Women's World Cup for 2027, talking about body dysmorphia and women's clothes sizes and ensuring that women who are buying football kits for the next World Cup in a few years' time will not feel like I felt buying my first women's football shirt, which was, this is too small for me. I was buying a double XL women's kit and that was considered a size 22, and how that made me feel was frankly shocking. And I thought, if I sign with Nike with all goodwill and with how I feel as a person, how can I sort of sleep at night knowing that I'm selling products to women that, you know, are 3-4 sizes bigger than they need to be? And so now, as well as having access to those products at wholesale price, I have a seat at the table to be able to change the future of women's football. I've been given a voice and a prominent voice. I mean, they listen to me. It's wild. Like I don't know why.
It's an amazing story. Tell us about investment. How did you? Because we've got lots of startup businesses on this call. You know, people who want to grow. They've got great ideas. Like you had a great idea, but how do you get it from being tiny into something that's massive?
I think everyone's journeys are going to be massively different. I think, and I hope it comes across, I think having a passion for whatever your project is key, and ensuring that you stay really close to that messaging. So if you're, whatever your end goal is, whether it's a service or whether it's a product or whether it's a platform, having like the ultimate passion and expertise in that area is really key, because all of my success has come from a moment where I haven't been expecting. It's almost been, I've been doorstepped by somebody and they've asked me the question, and because I am the ultimate expert in what I do, my passion for what I do comes across and my expertise comes across. I don't have to refer to anything. I know it all because it is so within me, that I know my clear objective and I know what I want to achieve. I think the second thing is being, and this is going to be different for other people, and there may be some of you that totally disagree with me here. I think making your objective making money is a really, really bad thing to do. And so it's difficult at times because sometimes the shiny lights off to the side and it's really like exciting and you're looking over here because that's really cool. That's a big money opportunity, or that's something that I never thought would happen to me. But every time that happens to me now, I remember my clear objective, and the core clear objective that I have is to grow the women's game and grow the women's game through brand awareness. And so every time I'm taken off piste, I remind myself my objective is always and will always be to grow the women's game. And I don't think that's going to ever end. I don't think there's going to ever be a point where I go, oh, my job here is done. And I feel like that's going to be ever happening. the way that I ended up in this situation was all, as I'm sure lots of people's stories are, was all chance, and also recognition of my privilege as well. So I saw an email in my inbox from NatWest, and the email was like, do you want to do a business course that will help you in areas where you need to help with your support with your business? It's completely free. You don't have to be a NatWest customer. It's free. And that was at the time for me, working in a pub, I was like, it's free, I'm there. And so I signed up for this NatWest business course. What that did is, like, without being dramatic, changed my life, because not only did it give me access to somebody to talk to, which was my mentor, it also gave me access points whenever there was a hurdle or something I didn't understand. It gave me access points to the people that could help me. So the way that this came about in terms of my investment was, I was put on a mock pitch trial with NatWest, and they invited in some investors to give feedback. And on the panel were like 4 investors from memory, and they basically were just there to say, here's what I would change, here's what I would add, good luck with what you're doing. And you were given 7 minutes, and you just had to go up and present your business. I'd never done anything like it in my life, and it was a mock, so it was a practice. And I got up there and I did my 7 minutes, and then afterwards Adam from Fearless Adventures came up to me and said, I know this is a bit cheeky because it's supposed to be a mock, and I know your business is really early doors and we wouldn't usually talk to somebody that's months into running their business, but we'd really like to meet you at our head office. And I went in, and for me, it was really important to me that I felt a connection to whoever I was going to be working with. And I remember distinctly going in, and there were dogs everywhere in the office, and I was like, sold. And I sat down, and the room that they had was like 8-9 people from the investment firm, primarily women. And they went round and they all told me their connection to sport, their relationship to sport and to football. And I just felt immediately like, that's such a nice added touch, that this is, the pressure's on me right now, but you've just gone, here's my connection to you, Helen. And it felt so special. And then after that, we worked through the Euros together. We worked through all of the Nike work that I was doing to try and win that contract. And Fearless Adventures invested in me, or agreed to investment in September, October. My big highlight would be, or the big thing that I'd like to highlight, is investment takes a long time. I was like, we've done it. And then October,
well, Helen, that's one of the questions we've got in from Claudia. How did you come to work with Fearless, and how are you finding it a few months into the deal?
Yeah, incredible. I'm not just saying this, I'd be quite open to saying that that I wasn't having the best investment experience. I am so lucky to be working with Fearless Adventures. The big thing about Fearless Adventures is they're an embedded capitalist firm, so they're really unique. So what happens is, when my team at the moment, which is 6 of us, but when I got investment, there was 3 of us, they immediately give you access to like 30-40 staff members, and they're experts in AI, SEO, PPC, accountancy, like they are across the board. So it's pretty incredible. And when I first started working in, even pre-investment, it would be little things like I wanted to film a TikTok to do my like a November deal, and they sent in their sort of social media team to help us to film it. And it's just a weight off your shoulders, like having experts in social media, in filmography. It's just, they are embedded into your team. Now, my fear was, of course, the other side of that, like you're going to have somebody looking over your shoulder every move you make. That's just not been the case. I mean, I've gone to them obviously for advice on a number of occasions. Last night when we were buying the World Cup gear, I phoned Ollie, who's my contact at Fearless. We had a chat through it because I just wanted his support. But never is it like, you're not allowed to do that, we don't want you doing this. It's just been support. And I just couldn't have asked for more. If I could do it all again, and I would 100% go with Fearless Adventures. And I would recommend anybody who's looking for that investment to look at that investment where, if you need it, if you don't have a massive team around you, where they give you that extra support, because it's been a game changer. And I've learned so much already in the short 4 months that they've been investing with us.
Thank you. We've got another question, and you touched upon Manchester Laces earlier on, but we haven't talked about that yet. So hopefully you can wrap that story into the answer to this question, which is, what's the FA's view on trans inclusion? Because
How long
Julia's
have we got?
fallen out of love with rugby because of their sort of position on trans exclusion.
Yeah, firstly, the rugby I'm not a rugby expert, but the rugby piece that landed very recently is shocking, and I'm really sorry that you've had that experience. The FA unfortunately isn't much better. In 2016, they last updated their trans policy, and simply put, it isn't good enough. It requires players to take hormone tests if they want to play FA league fixtures. And here at Manchester Lacers, we've pushed back on that quite openly. I would say we're probably the highest representation of the trans community in the Northwest, if not in the UK. And it genuinely is one of the most welcoming environments. It truly is representative of Manchester, I think. I just think that the club is just a true representation of all people, and I just think it's just wonderful. We, as a result of the trans policy, have a team playing in an FA affiliated league, but we've pulled out our other team playing in an FA affiliated league to play just friendly fixtures across the country. So we've just been to London recently and played fixtures in other locations. But in the background, I've been working on sort of chatting to the FA and trying to get answers on when the next trans policy will be released. I think that 6-7 years just simply isn't good enough for how much the world has changed in the last 6-7 years. I think that it's backwards, and we're really hoping that we can make that change happen in the near future. So what I'm calling for from the FA isn't necessarily answers right now. I just want to know when. I want to know a date when we're going to be told and when the policy is going to be updated by, because at the moment we're just in no man's land, and I need to know. But yeah, Manchester Lacers is an incredibly inclusive environment. I don't want to do the sales pitch, but we are trans inclusive and always will be, and it will be at the forefront of the work that we do in terms of making everyone feel included.
Thank you for that. And I think it's really important to say there is a lot of there are lots of divisive tactics going on at the moment, and one of the things that's sort of said is lesbians don't support trans women and things like that, and I feel like having you actively campaigning in this way is a really strong point.
Yeah, that just isn't representative of the 550 plus people within the Manchester Lacers community, both, you know, lesbian women, allies, bi women. I've not seen a single person or a single disruptor within the Manchester Lacers family. I also think that we've created this community through a very, very strong and clear ethos, which is sent to every player before they join the club, and that is around equality. And equality, you can't say, you know, we believe in equality and then cut anyone out of the journey. I mean, we have non-binary people that come to the club. If they feel safe in our club, then fantastic, please join us. And we have trans men and women that play at Manchester Lacers, and the entire community is supportive of that. And so it just isn't representative maybe of my echo chamber. I can't comment on everyone else, but within my world, within my sphere, it is one of the most supportive environments. And, you know, it doesn't reflect my views at all, nor does it reflect anyone around me. Thank you.
Davinia has asked a question that completely changes the topic for us. What are your thoughts about the decision for blue shorts for the girls team?
Yeah, so one of the topics we talked about at Portland, which is when I was at the Nike World headquarters, was we're talking a lot about period pants being introduced over the next year into sort of elite football. My major comment around the colour of shorts and making female footballers feel more included or feeling more safe to play football, I guess, would be the way of framing it. Is I can only talk about my lived experience, and I've played for a football team where I've worn white shorts and felt incredibly uncomfortable in those moments of the year. So for me, I think that it's a positive thing to bring in the blue shorts for all the players, knowing that even if one player is directly affected by that it's a positive thing. And what I will say though is, moving forwards, the period pants, which I've been testing for Nike and which we've I've seen up close and personal, which we released in 2024, but the players will be testing them over the next 6 to 8 months, are incredible. And if we can lean into having this way of not having to change or do anything differently from our male counterparts in the men's national team, and we want to keep that look and feel, and then so be it. The feedback from the Lionesses behind closed doors was, we won the Euros in a full white kit, and we've become synonymous for that full white kit. They want to play in that full white kit, but they also want to feel safe going out in that kit. And I know Leah Williamson's spoken out about it, but she was in so much pain going into the semi-final of the Euros that she almost didn't think she could play. Now imagine adding on to that, going out in the home kit that day. I mean, it just doesn't bear thinking about in front of like 10, 15, 20 million people and watching at home. So I do feel like it's a positive thing for now, but hopefully the next steps are we can protect ourselves whilst also being able to be like, we'll wear whatever kit we want.
Davinia's also asked a question about whether you played football at school. It sounds like she had a similar experience to me. They started a petition so they could play football in PE, and they still weren't allowed. So did you get the opportunity to play football at school yourself?
Firstly, you're a legend, Davinia. Like, big up. And no, I didn't. I wasn't allowed to play at school. I played with the boys at primary school, but I very quickly was sort of cut out of the journey. Just sort of in terms of a timeline, played probably age 4 to age 8, 9, and then I didn't play again until I was 18. When I was at drama school, and then when drama school found out I was playing football, they stopped me from being able to play because we were training almost like athletes in ballet, tap, jazz, all that stuff. You weren't allowed to do physical sport. So I have a very funny relationship with football in lots of ways, and I guess that's what's led me to launch an inclusive space, because for me, my relationship to football isn't based on, you know, my goal tally. It's based on community and friendships and like bringing people together. So I had that journey, which was stop-start. I would have played every day if I could. I loved it so much, and I loved watching it so much. So yeah, that was my experience. It was very much cut off. And now what we're seeing obviously is the Lionesses changed the game in terms of government legislation. Lotte Wubben-Moy in particular, the England centre-back, Jill Scott told me, who's an England footballer, that the night after they won the Euros, they were all really drunk and having the best time, and Lotte Wubben-Moy texted the WhatsApp group saying, "What will be our legacy?" And Jill was like, "Come on, not today, we just won the Euros." But Lotte was like, "No, we need to change the game. We can change the game." And within a week, a letter to the government, and now every little girl should have the same access to every little boy, to all sport really, but in particular obviously to our national sport, football.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Emily's asked, how did Stagecoach know about your drama background? She said she's asked because when we make career pivots, we can sometimes feel like we need to hide the bits that aren't relevant to what we're pursuing at the time.
Yeah, I think that's a really good question, but I also think lean into those things. Like I probably, when I first started in my professional career outside of university, would almost lean away from my drama school background, like almost not, I wouldn't say I was ashamed of it. But there obviously would be a lot of connotations towards like, well, you mustn't be very smart, or you mustn't be able to do X, Y, Z. And so as I developed through my career, I then put it back at the forefront. So it was on my LinkedIn. I was very prominent about that. I was also very open about being a big fan of like musicals and being a big fan of theatre. And that was my kind of getaway. I would say that on a Saturday, you'll either see me at a football stadium or at the theatre. Like they're my passion points. So I felt like I lent into it, but also being really proud of things that aren't relevant to your career right here, right now, I think are really paramount. I think it's really important to do that. And as I say, all the things I learned from drama school and all the things I learned from being an actor have, I guess, got me like literally on this call right now. I feel no fear. There's never anxiety of me talking to people. I love it. Like, I just feel like it's kind of something that really just paved the way for me. So lean into those things that aren't relevant to your career right now, put them on your LinkedIn, put them on your social media platforms. You never know when they could be relevant.
Tell us about imposter syndrome, Helen. How is being a woman and being an LGBT woman in particular sort of created or helped you overcome imposter syndrome over this journey?
I wouldn't say I'd overcome it, Claire. But yeah, I think in terms of, I think it's definitely still prominent, and it almost ironically gets more and more prominent with more and more accolades and more success. It's strange how imposter syndrome works, because in the beginning, when I was trying to prove a point, every little hurdle, every little success, I'd be like, well, yeah, I kind of saw this happening. And then when you put on power lists, or the way that it's phrased, or when you put on nominated for things, or when you put on lists with other incredible women, you're like, this can't be real. Like this, I really don't understand this, and this is not a genuine thing. I'm not fishing. I'm like, I don't understand. I think my biggest moment of imposter syndrome, and I look back and I really regret this, so this would be my big takeaway, was last year. My face was painted on the steps of Wembley, which was the most incredible moment, and I didn't enjoy it because I was so confused the entire time. And when I went to the reveal, even to the day where I was at the reveal, and they brought England's captain Leah Williamson to unveil it, I remember being stood there and just being like, I just don't understand. Like I felt uncomfortable, and that's probably the best way of describing it. And now I kind of look back and I really regret it, because it actually probably was one of the best days of my life. I mean, like, my face on the steps of Wembley, that's mint. But at the time I was like, this is it didn't feel right. It just felt like I was taking somebody else's spot. I think even more so being a gay woman and being out and proud, I think has also been has added to that imposter syndrome. I think often because you can sometimes feel, I don't know the best way of putting it but sometimes I feel like as a woman already, I'm not deserving of a leadership role. I feel like as a gay woman, even more so, and that's not that I believe those things. It's just that I feel like in the minority already as a leader, as being a female leader who's very confident and outspoken and wants to make real change happen. And then that's siphoned off even more into being out and proud. And sometimes I feel like the latter can be a hindrance to me. And because I'm so out and proud, there's often spaces I'm going into with male straight leaders, especially in football, remember, and I'm openly a gay woman. Like I feel sometimes like I'm pointless to you. Like I am out, I'm proud, I'm gay, I'm a woman, that I feel like almost like nothing. And it's really difficult to push back against that sometimes. It's really difficult to be to continue and be steadfast in my vision and what I want to achieve. And it takes a lot of water off a duck's back mentality. But it's definitely still there, and I'm still young, so I'm growing, and I'm just trying to take it day by day.
You're bloody brilliant, that's what you are. We'll finish on one more question because we're running out of time. And this is a question from Davinia again, which is, what's the next steps for Fowdies?
Yeah, wow.
If I speak to you again in 5 years, what will you have done by then, Helen?
Yeah, really good question. I think if you come back to me in September after the Women's World Cup, I'll be able to give you more of an insight into where we're going to be. I'm nervous. Yeah, so we are already, it's difficult because we're already in the place that we're in. We are the only retailer for women's sport. I think in 5 years we'll be a household name in football, in terms of football fans, known for the place that you go and get your football boots if you're a woman. You go and get your kit designed if you're a women's football team or a girls football team, and where you go and get your Lionesses kit or your Women's Australia Matildas kit or your US Women's National Team kit. I think will become the go-to and known unanimously as the place to be, the place to go. I hope more than anything, I'm just in a position where I can create more roles and more space for women in football. So that's a big goal, ambition of mine, is to continue to grow the business so that we can create lots of really cool opportunities for people in this space. And I guess my biggest goal is just to continue feeling fulfilled. Like that's why I started this. I didn't start this because I needed a job. I started this because I wanted to do something that made me feel really fulfilled. So that's my overarching ambition.
Absolutely brilliant. I love your story. Thank you so much for sharing it with us today. There's more questions and lovely comments as well if you've got time to have a look at them, but thank you on behalf of everybody here today, and just to everybody else, thank you for coming, and please check out prideinleadership.co.uk for the upcoming events and get yourself booked on. Thanks, Helen.
Thank you so much, guys. Really appreciate it.